What's up, guys? Ballin with Blizzy back with another video. We're going to talk about Survivor Week 3 strategy and selection today. Week 2, we had some close calls. I stayed off the Cowboys. I stayed off the Cardinals. Cowboys probably should have lost. Cardinals were in control the entire game, but almost gave it up in the end. We're going to take a look back at the Week 2 results, and then we're going to go ahead to Week 3, and I'm going to give you my pick for this week. So let's jump right in, starting with what happened in Week 2. As you can see, results, 16,965 entries remain alive. It's about $1,100 per entry because we have not had too many knocked out. Remember, this started with about 18,145, as you can see up here. So, Cardinals, 30.5% got through. Ravens, as I recommended on here on this channel in this video last week, got through 41-17. This Cowboys, I think any of us who were not on the Cowboys were heavily rooting against these 3,506 entries to be knocked out. Rams got through at pretty decent popularity, nearly 10%. Lions got through at above 5%. Biggest knockouts were on the Steelers at home to Seattle and the Vikings at home to the Atlanta Falcons. So as it stands here again, large percentage of the overall entries from week 1 are still alive as we head into week 3. And we're going to talk about who I like, what my kind of strategies are. And one thing that I do want to mention about last week, if the Cardinals had gotten knocked out, everybody alive would still have the Cardinals because those who used them would have been knocked out. So everyone alive would have still had the Cardinals. I think we can use this to our benefit here in week 5, where there's a little bit of murkiness depending on what you did with the Bills this week. On Thursday night, they already cruised and beat the Dolphins. Probably about 15% or so got through on them, I would estimate. We'll see that official number come in tonight when VSiN releases the Circa Survivor and Circa Millions picks. But one thing I want to mention, if we jump over to the season planner, you can see right here, Arizona, if you still have them, a lot of people used them week 1. We didn't, or I didn't, if you were, following the picks on this channel. Denver, Baltimore were the 2 picks that I've given out here. If you didn't use Arizona week 1, you didn't use Arizona week 2, I really, really love this week 5 spot for the Cardinals. The Bills are obviously going to be the biggest favorite on this slate for week 5 when you consider they're playing the Patriots at home. But again, I imagine a decent percentage of folks used them this past Thursday night, and I imagine they are going to be heavily deployed next week, week 4, 10 days rest, coming off with the Saints coming off a coast-to-coast trip from Seattle, where they play this week, all the way cross country to Buffalo, New York, where they will play the rested and at-home Buffalo Bills. So I think this Arizona spot is unique to have them still in week 5 if you have used Denver and Baltimore. And then, like I said, the mission continues to be, until we see otherwise, to use Philadelphia here at home on Thanksgiving, and then on Christmas to have both Washington and Kansas City still alive at your disposal, so we can kind of see how the chaotic season shakes out and be able to deploy one of them at home as favorites, the 2 biggest favorites on that Christmas slate. So if we jump over to ESPN and look at, the games and the odds for this week, obviously, if you picked Buffalo, you're already through. Looked a little shaky at times, credit to Miami, but, Buffalo just had too much in the end. They got that huge interception from Tua there in the 4th quarter as the Dolphins were driving. But you look here, Green Bay at Cleveland, 7.5 point favorite. 7.5 point favorites. Indianapolis, this could be a trap game. This is an interesting one. I'm interested to see how the Circa crowd plays this, because if Indianapolis is not the team we've seen through 2 weeks, they could lose this game. If they are the team that we've seen through 2 weeks and they're a lot better than we projected preseason, there's going to be better spots later in the season to use them. So I'm off of them this week, but I am very interested to see what percentage of folks use them as their Circa Survivor pick this week. They're 4.5-point favorites on the road in Nashville. Cincinnati, Minnesota, 2 backup quarterbacks, spreads 2.5. That's a stay away. Pittsburgh and New England, both 1-1. Both have looked good at times. Both have looked shaky at times. Pittsburgh defense is not what we thought it was going to be, at least to this point. 2.5-point favorite. That's a stay away. Philadelphia, a large portion of the crowd used them week 1. A lot of people saving them for Thanksgiving. So for me, as you know, that's a stay away for me. I'm kind of holstering them until later in the season, preferably for Thanksgiving. New York and Tampa. This is interesting. Tampa's a 6.5-point favorite, but Tampa's injury report does not look good. They are beat up along the offensive line. We know Baker is turnover prone as it is. If that Jets D line led by Quinnen Williams can get some pressure, this is a really, really interesting matchup. I believe Tampa has 3 starting offensive linemen out for this game. That's not really something that you want to be comfortable using. Now, again, the line's going to reflect that. This is all built in. Even with that, they're projected to, win by 6.5, primarily probably because the Jets themselves are starting Tyrod Taylor, a backup quarterback. But I don't know. Aaron Glenn, a defensive-minded coach, getting a hobbled Tampa Bay offensive line. If they can beat him up in the trenches and force Baker off of his spots and hang around in this game, this is a really interesting one. So for me, Tampa Bay 6.5. I think you're going to find better spots. It's good spread, but you got to remember they're going to play home to the Panthers. They're going to play home to the Saints. So be patient. You're going to have your chances to play Tampa Bay at home as a touchdown favorite or more later in the season. Vegas, Washington. Interesting line. Another backup quarterback. It's kind of the theme this week. Mariota starting in place of Jaden Daniels. Las Vegas traveling from the West Coast to the East Coast on short rest after that Monday Night Football loss to the Chargers. So that's a stay away for me. Atlanta and Carolina. This is another interesting one. A lot of people could go here. Atlanta favored by 5.5 on the road at Carolina, who has looked pretty terrible so far. But again, the reason I'm holding off on this is because Atlanta's got winnable home games, later in the season if you need to use them. They're going to play Miami at home. Miami's 0-3, doesn't look good. They could be shipping, Tyreek Hill out of town. They could fire everybody. They could clean house. So I think you might be in a good spot if you use Atlanta later in the season at home against Miami. You're obviously going to be able to use Atlanta later in the season home to Carolina. And of course, in that division, Atlanta will play a home game against the Saints as well. So not quite the spot for me to deploy the Falcons, but I can see folks going to them this week as a 5.5-point favorite against a team who looks, to be one of the worst in the NFL. Houston, Jacksonville, 1.5-point favorite. That's kind of a toss-up. Stay away from me. Denver at the Chargers. Chargers look really good. Denver looked shaky in a road loss at Indianapolis, traveling from Indy to Denver to Los Angeles to play this game. That's a stay away for me. And then if you continue to look, obviously, Seattle 7.5 and the Chiefs 6.5 are the 2 best spots. So by process of elimination, you guys all know by now, I'm planning to have Kansas City available to me on that Christmas slate. So that means I'm rolling Seattle, which I've kind of alluded to in the week 1 video. I alluded to in the week 2 video. I like where they're at. Couple things to note. They are very, very banged up, right? They're missing 3 starters in the secondary. Julian Love, Devin Witherspoon, and Nick Emenwari. Missing all 3 of those guys. Missing a really trusted back in Zach Charbonnet. Really great on third downs. Great out of the backfield with his hands. And really, really, really critical in pass protection. And that's key, I think, for a guy like Sam Darnold. You don't want him to get happy feet back there. You don't want him to, start feeling frazzled. You want him to feel comfortable in the pocket and be able to, find guys like Jackson Smith-Njigba, Torrey Horton, Cooper Kupp. And obviously that means it's going to be a lot on Kenneth Walker. I would project him to play 80 to 85% of the snaps, even though he's played less than 50% across the first 2 games. So Seattle's my pick for this week. And it gets a little shaky, but I was happy to see that this line was 7.5 before the injuries were officially ruled doubtful for those guys, and they're going to miss the game. And the line didn't move. It stayed at 7.5. And the other thing that I'm playing, just to go down narrative street, is Seattle's lost 7 of their last 8 home games. Mike Macdonald's getting questioned about it. Hey, how come before you arrived on scene as the head coach, the team was really strong at home? One of the best home field advantages, the 12th man, Lumen Field. Crowd is always electric. That was such a tough place to play for so many years. Mike Macdonald takes over at the helm, and they've lost 7 of 8, including a home game in this exact spot last year to the Giants as 7.5-point favorites. They've been grilling Macdonald about that. He's been asked why did you lose the home opener dating back to last year? Why did you lose all those home games that you should have won? And then, of course, they go across the country to Pittsburgh and win as an underdog with a bunch of guys out. So I think really the narrative street is what I'm holding on to. Obviously, the line, 7.5, I feel great about. But I just think Mike Macdonald does not want to lose another home game. He's going to have these guys ready to roll. Spencer Rattler playing his first game this season outside of the Superdome. Of course, they were at home to the Cardinals. They lost. They were at home to the Niners, and they lost. So 2 of Seattle's division opponents, division rivals, went to New Orleans and beat this Saints team. I just think this is not a spot you can be at home to this Saints team in their first road game and give it up. So we're rolling with the Seattle Seahawks. We're going to put our faith in them. I'm rolling them across all my entries. So good luck to you all. If you're playing Seattle, I think this is really the only spot you can use them comfortably. Definitely the only spot this season where they're going to be a touchdown favorite. So let me know in the comments below if you agree with this pick, if you disagree with this pick, who you're rolling with, and how you're doing in your survivor pools. Talk to you guys again soon.